folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your, one sec. There we go. Hey folks, welcome back to Game Geeks. I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Today's episode, we are talking about a pair of Mutants and Masterminds products. Specifically, we are talking about the Power Profiles Guidebook and the Gadget Guide. Both of these originally saw the light of day as a series of individually released PDFs from the Green Ronin website. Then, after the entire set was done, they were published as hard copy books. So, quick review, this is for Mutants and Masterminds 3rd edition. This is the latest iteration of their D20 superhero role-playing game, although to be quite honest with you, it has evolved so far beyond what we knew as D20 in the early 2000s that I almost kind of wonder if that's the appropriate phrase to use for it anymore. We reviewed a couple of Mutants and Masterminds products earlier on, most recently the Deluxe Player's Guide and the Emerald City Guide, which is one of their fictional cities in which you can have superheroics or supervillainy. One of the issues that you're going to have with Mutants and Masterminds, and I will freely admit this, is a problem that I had early on when we started playing this, is point-buy systems scare me a little bit. And Mutants and Masterminds is squarely in the point-buy system category. I didn't grow up on point-buy systems. Like a lot of gamers, I started with basic D&D, then got into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, a foray into Cthulhu, and I really never saw a point-buy system until I got my hands on a copy of Wild Talents, and the book before that, Godlike, from Arc Dream Publishing. Now, those books were its alternate take on supers, but you could buy everything point buy, which absolutely blew my mind. And I'll be quite honest with you, I have a lot of analysis paralysis. That is where, okay, I have this limit and I have this many points and I can buy this, but if I add this modifier and this limitation and that idea and what ends up happening is I go into it with a carefully crafted idea of what I want my character to be, backstory, personality, abilities, non-player characters he interacts with, etc. And I end up with an acid-blooded weir shark with a machine gun on one arm and laser-mounted rockets on his shoulder and psychic abilities, and then I have no idea what in the hell just happened. So whenever I go into a point-buy system, I have a little bit of that concern sitting on my shoulder. What Mutants and Masterminds does really well is they give you some examples in the book, but if you're a very simple creature like I am, I often tell people that I really have a 3-neuron brain. One of them is repressed, one of them is occasionally functional, and one of them is filled with X-Men trivia. When you've got a limited ability like I do to comprehend these things, more examples are always helpful. This is where the Power Profiles book really comes in. What the Power Profiles book does is it takes, instead of a building it from the ground up approach, the Power Profiles takes the approach of it's your best friend who games with you, who really understands the system. So you say to your best friend, I really want to play a character with dimensional powers. How would that work? So you would open up the book or talk to your friend in the dimensional powers chapter, and then it talks about the descriptors or the trappings that make the game work, that power work the way it does, how countering works, basic effects, and then it breaks it down into offensive powers, defensive powers, movement and utility, and then complications. So let's say you have the dimensional power and you want an offensive power. And I want to make something where I can use my dimensional power to physically hit something and hurt them. Well, then you go, okay, offensive powers, dimensional blade. Penetrating damage, cutting, subtle, 1 point plus 2 points per rank. There you go. It's broken down what you want your power to do, what you want, what trappings or additional abilities you want on it, what it can look like, and then it's done all the math for you automatically. As one of my players recently described this, it's Mutants and Masterminds for dummies. Because as we went into this, most of us weren't used to point-buy systems. And I've always looked at them a little askance because I've had players in the past who would take that opportunity to craft their odd fetishist fantasy. When I lived in another state and played with another group, I have a guy who always wanted to play the female, super smart martial artist type. So we always joked that he wanted to be part of the porn star ninja recon team. In reality, he wanted to play barbed wire. He just didn't know that at the time. So this breaks down a variety of powers. So I'm going to go through the list fairly quickly to give you an idea of what's there. Air, armor, animal, cold, cosmic darkness, death, dream, earth, electrical element, fire, gravity, kinetic, life, light, luck, magic. The magic powers section is actually very interesting because there's your way to put spells into a game. I know it seems really obvious, but if you ever wanted to apply this game to another genre, like say fantasy, that's the chapter for you. Magnetic, martial, meta, which is fun. It's like how you can have a power to manipulate power. Morphing, radiation, sensory, size, speed, strength, summoning, talent, teleport, time, water, and weather. And each one breaks it down into that offensive, defensive, movement, utility, etc. This is really good for you. In fact, this is almost as commonly in my hand when I start working on a game for this as this book is. Because it's like, well, crap, what do I want this guy to be able to do? Ah, there it is. For instance, and hopefully none of my players will see this before we play this week, they're going to be facing a speedster who uses teleport as his ability. And one of his attacks is he teleports pieces of you away. So instead of like physically hitting you, he just flicks his hands really fast and then bits of you start flying off. It's called a port of attack. And it is a perception ranged damage, but based on fortitude rather than toughness. And it has this number of points, and I bought up what I could based on the limits on points described by the power level of the game. Like I said, I'll let you know how it goes. That is for the completely power type character. Now there are talent powers in there if you want your very skilled but non-powered guy. Your Batman, your Blue Beetle, for instance. Iron Man would really fall into the armor. Hawkeye would be sort of in that talent pool as well. Gadget Guide, this book here, followed a similar path, originally released as individual PDFs, then bound together into a common book for those of you who didn't want to download all the PDFs or just like having a solid thing in your hand when you're making a game. The Gadget Guide takes the approach of building equipment. Now, equipment building in Mutants and Masterminds works very similarly to the powers. You figure out what you want it to do, and then there may be a reduction in power on that based on the fact that it's removable from you. It's not intrinsically part of you and therefore can't be removed. For instance, Havoc's blast power from the Marvel universe, that you can't really take that away from him. You can't suddenly go, oh look, I took off your widget and you now can't do your thing anymore. Whereas Iron Man, you can really remove Iron Man from his armor. I mean, it's hard to do, but you can remove him from his armor and then he doesn't have power. Hawkeye's bow, easily removable, for instance. So with the gadget guides, what it does is it gives you a breakdown between when it's regular equipment and when it's a gadget or some sort of more powered artifact. And then it gives you ideas for what sorts of gadgets you can build using the descriptors. So for example, I'm just going to read through one here, nanotech. If you have nanotech-based gadgets, well, what you got here? Well, you can have nanofabricators, which are create objects, innate, permanent, and subtle. There are your modifiers for it. And it gives you the points just like the power guide did. Or you can have personal nano suits that give you immunity to certain effects, life support, etc. Attack nano, which really kind of fall into other zones, like if you want the infamous monofilament whip, which I know a lot of people find are very game-breaking, or monofilament blades. Those are kind of buried back under weapons and cyber gear, but it's fairly easy to cross-reference between the two. My personal favorite in this is the Nano Adaptive Armor, which costs you a butt-ton of points, 70, and considering the starting character in Mutants and Masterminds has 150 for your average level supers, you're dumping almost half your points into that, and it doesn't do anything until you suffer a damage from it. So let's say you're fighting Havoc, just because I sort of like that character, and he hits you with his Plasma Blast, and you happen to not be killed by it, and he shoots you again, you're now immune to that effect. You've already been hit by it once, it's adapted to it, you're immune to that effect. What you need to do in that case is keep up a fairly detailed list of what you are and are not immune to, because obviously Havoc's Plasma Blast would be different from Iron Man's Force Blast from his gauntlets, would be different from Thor's Lightning, would be different from Cyclops' Optic Blast, etc., etc., etc. You could even get down as granular as Storm's Lightning, which is more natural, would be different from Thor's Lightning, which is magically summoned, but I don't know any GM that really feels like going that crazy and that far down the rabbit hole in terms of realism. If you're that concerned about realism and origin of energies, then you probably don't need to be playing a supers game in the first place. So as before, I'm going to do a quick run through of the types of gadgets and equipment that are described here. Alien technology, archaic weapons, armor, Asian weapons, really? Biotech, computers, cybertech, energy weapons, firearms, heavy weapons, installations, magic mecha, yes mecha, you can build mecha using Mutants and Masterminds. It's not that shocking considering in the previous version of Mutants and Masterminds, 2nd edition, there was an entire supplement book called Mecha and Manga, I believe, which was entirely dedicated to the manga anime style and theme of producing a role-playing game. Mecha nanotech powers, so items that augment, replicate, or affect powers, psychic robots, spy tech, steam tech, traps, utility, vehicles, and then a couple of appendices on inventing and ritualism of magic. Again, this takes away the analysis paralysis. This now is, all right, I want a guy to have a gizmo that can do this, that, and the other thing. And I look it up in the book and I figure out the points and it's ready to go. I really like Mutants and Masterminds. It took a little bit to grow on me, but I really feel like once I got over the fact of, hey, roll for your dodge. Well, no, Kurt, you don't roll for dodge unless you're doing a full defense. It's just a static number. Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot. There's about 2 of those in an evening before I finally remember what I forgot. It really plays well. It's smooth. It's not clunky. It's a little bit front-loaded in that you have to put a lot of work in to build a character, but these 2 books in particular make that job easier for you. The Powers Profile and the Gadget Guide really are, I think they're essentials to the game. Truly I do. Unless you are a savant at understanding how the rules work, which if you're out there and that's you, awesome, that ain't me. I'm a narrativist. But if you really understand all of them, then is it an absolute necessity? Probably not. But if you struggle with that a little bit, or you just want great examples of these powers and what they can do, for instance, I would have never thought of a teleporter having the abortive attack where he just like pops bits out of you, or even worse, teleports things into you, which gives new meaning to all those times that you see people who have like watches or surgical implementation that have been left inside of them. Maybe it wasn't an evil surgeon. Maybe it was actually you were attacked by a teleporter who put that stuff into you. Or, you know, gerbils. Then these are the books for you. I want to take this opportunity to thank everyone who supported us in our transition to HD. It's taken a while to get there. This has been an absolute bear of a winter for me between my injury and school and just the usual crap that goes on in a life. I apologize. Personally, I would love to Rip Van Winkle my way through the rest of 2015 and just wake up in 2016 and hope that it all passed okay. But we really want to thank everyone who supported it for us, who've been patient and sticking around while we've had this extended break. We're back. We're going to become more regular because we're eating fiber and we're taking our Miralax and we care for you. For Game Geeks, I'm your host, Kurt Wiegel. Good day and good gaming.